and was marched to Yachats, and was marched to Yachats. Blind Amanda marched to Yachats, leaving a trail of her blood, a trail of blood on the rocks of Cape Perpetua. Amanda's suffering was great when soldier removed her from her daughter Julia.
For thousands of years, the Coos, Umpqua and Siuslaw people have lived along the shore and waterways of the Oregon coast. In the late 18th century, the people became aware of strange sailing ships that passed along the coast. Soon after, fur trappers, mostly working for the Hudson's Bay Company, would visit our lands to trap and trade. In the 1850s, gold miners and other settlers were pouring into southwestern Oregon. The government wanted to make treaties with all the Western Oregon tribes so they could take titles of lands and move the native peoples to reservations away from the settlers. In the summer of 1855, General Joel Palmer was sent to negotiate a treaty with all the coastal tribes. The treaty stipulated if the tribes would move to the coast reservation that was created along the central coast, they would have land, money, food, and some reservation infrastructure, such as a flour mill and sawmill. This treaty was never ratified, but the government behaved as though it had been. The battles between settlers and the southwestern Oregon Indians were heating up in 1855, and the government wanted to isolate the Coos, Umpqua and Siuslaw people, in part out of fear they may join the Rogue River people in the war. In 1856, the government removed the Coos Bay and Umpqua people to Fort Umpqua. 4 years later, they were removed again to the Alsea Subagency at Yachats, a district of the Coast Reservation, and built on the site of the Alsea village Yachats. The Siuslaw people remained on the Siuslaw River. The Coos Bay and Umpqua people upon arrival encountered what could be seen as a grim omen for the near future. Several Alsea houses still contained the corpses of the last people of Yachats that had died from smallpox. There had been no survivors to properly bury them. The government did not allow native people to be off reservation without written permission of the Indian agent. But many native women were married to white men, and many of these families lived with extended native family. These were people who had avoided going to the reservation or who had fled from it. Conditions on the reservation were difficult. Food was often scarce, and crops sometimes failed. People struggled to gather mussels from the rocks. They fished for salmon from the creeks, and in summer dug camas at Cape Perpetua. Many people died every year from diseases. So many people fled the reservation for their old homes, often living with their kin married to white men. In 1864, orders came down to Fort Yamhill to go down the coast in the spring to capture off-reservation natives and bring them back to the reservation. Corporal Royal Bensel was part of a company of 10 from the fort, plus Amos Harvey, the agent at Alsea, that were sent on this mission. Bensel kept a diary of the events. They set off for Coos Bay on April 19, 1864. On May 1st, they went up Coos River in their search. At the head of Tidewater, they came to a small ranch of A.P. DeCouis and his blind Coos wife, Amanda. They had been hiding 2 of Amanda's relatives. As Bensel notes, at this place they captured another woman and a man. Amanda and DeCouis had one daughter, Julia, who was about 8 years old. The soldiers were forcing the 3 native adults into the boat when Amanda spoke. Bensel wrote, "After getting in the boat, I was surprised to hear one of the women, old and blind, ask me, 'Naiga tiaga nanich naiga tanas Julia?' Let me see my little Julia." I complied with his parental demand, and was shocked to see this little girl throw her arms about old Amanda DeCouis' neck and cry, "S'chaya, Mama," "Dear Mama." DeCouis promised the agent to school Julia. In this moment, Amanda's loss and sorrow began. In just one moment, she was separated from her young daughter, with time for just one last hug. DeCouis apparently did nothing to stop the soldiers from taking away his wife. Mother and daughter were never to meet again. The soldiers and Agent Harvey stayed in Coos Bay for several more days. On May 4, they tried to remove another Indigenous woman from her family, Mrs. Metcalf. She too had a young child. However, unlike DeCouis, Mr. Metcalf argued forcefully for his wife, and they left her alone to stay with her family. By the morning of May 5, they began to head north to the LC subagency. In total, they captured 46 Indians. On the first 4 days, they were walking along the dune beaches when they finally reached Cape Mountain. The next day, they began one of the hardest sections of the journey, walking along the rough, rocky cliffs and headlands along Hasita Head and Cape Perpetua. On May 10, Bensel wrote, "This coast along our route today seems volcanic, rough, ragged, burnt rock. We crossed chasms running from the shore several hundred feet, and some instances extended under the mountain. These chasms were 30 and 40 feet deep. Every tidal wave rushes, splashing and foaming white up these natural tail races. They were wicked-looking places. Amanda, who is blind, tore her feet horribly over these ragged rock, leaving blood sufficient to track her by. One of the boys led her round the dangerous places. I cursed Indian agents generally, Harvey particularly. By 12 we reached the agency. The great gates swung open, and I counted the Indians as they filed in, turned them over to the agent, and God knows we all felt relieved." And this is the last mention of Amanda, a woman separated from her daughter, taken from her home, walked blind and barefoot over jagged rocks, leaving her with bloody feet, to be imprisoned at a place strange to her, the LC subagency at Yachats. In the following years, half the people at the subagency died. The subagency did not keep detailed census records. We have found no more mention of Amanda and do not know her fate, but she probably died at the subagency and was buried there. In a final indignity, when Highway 101 was built in the 1920s, it disturbed and displaced numerous graves.
The history of the Yachats New Year's Day Peace Hike. How the Peace Hike came into being was from an unplanned event that took place in the Amanda Grotto immediately following the dedication of the Amanda Trail in July 2009. The trail was a 25-year endeavor to plan and build. Many tribal members attended the formal opening at the new North Trailhead. At the end of the dedication ceremony, and at the request of attending tribal members, people hiked over to the Amanda Grotto, where the Amanda statue stands. Over 50 people gathered in silence at the site of the statue. Tribal flutist Doc Slider began playing Amazing Grace. It was at that moment, in the peace of the grotto, the statue, and the sweet music that filled the air, that a profound awareness enveloped the group, acknowledging the fact that atrocities like those faced by Amanda and her people have occurred longer than we'd like to admit, and continue to occur throughout the world, and recognizing that it falls to all of us to take responsibility to do better. Attending that event in the Amanda Grotto was Laura Lee Svengard, Yachats Trails Chair, who was deeply moved. It was from that experience that Laura Lee conceived the idea of the Peace Hike. Having the Peace Hike at the beginning of the new year commemorates a tragic experience that Amanda had come to symbolize, while making a solemn commitment by each of us to find that place of peace within us, to vow to let that power direct our actions in the new year when we engage others, and to courageously speak out against injustice, bigotry, and callous perspectives on those who suffer, to treat people of all cultures with honor, dignity, and respect. As importantly, the Amanda Trail has helped to heal wounds carried intergenerationally by tribal people, to build trust and to bring reconciliation between a previously divided people. Hence, the first Yachats New Year's Day Peace Hike came into being January 1, 2010, and it's continued annually no matter what challenges have occurred. In December 2016, Mayor Ron Breen and the Yachats City Council declared January 1 to be Indigenous Peoples Day, to coincide with the intention of the now annual Yachats New Year's Day Peace Hike.
I've written a few songs. I've written a song called Amanda, and it's about a Coos lady that's from on up the river that you came up, and they capture her and they take her up to Yachats, which is 80 some miles away, and they took her away from her daughter Julia, and they marched her all the way up there, and she was blind, and she cut her feet going over Cape Perpetua, and I wrote a song. The state of Oregon was getting ready to pass a law where it was illegal for a European person to marry a native person. So they were rounding up all these people, and when they went up Coos River, they found a lady, and her name was Amanda, and the person that she was living with, he wouldn't marry her, and they had a daughter, and he kept the daughter. So they put her in a boat, and they brought her down Coos River. There's written history in there that they would actually see those boats coming by with the tribal people in them. They took her out to Amanda and some other tribal people out to the coast, and they marched them all up the coast. It's 80 miles from my house to Yachats. So, I'm sure she walked over that. When she got up towards Cape Perpetua, there was rock. It's volcanic rock. She cut her feet so bad that one of the soldiers said in his journal that they could track her. She never left the Yachats area. Probably 50% of our tribal people that went to Yachats perished.
Blind Amanda walked from Coos River to Yachats,
And they just closed down the Yachats reservation, and when that happened, all the tribal people came back here.